to being able to speak in public, or even get a word in edgewise, given the company I keep. It is my function tonight to serve as mistress of ceremonies for this celebration for two very important, yet very different members of our PRISM family, Bryan Rehfeldt and Bob Yeager. Tonight, I have brought together and formed a panel of experts to dissect and analyze their characters, habits, eccentricities, fantasies, sexual habits, and bodily functions.
All right! And we're going to go in an hour and a half.
Over the past few months, we have painstakingly examined and compiled volumes of data. And this evening, we intend to reveal our findings with the use of graphs, flowcharts, overheads, and the other tools of empirical scientific research. Or we may just get drunk and make fun of them. But one thing is certain, both Bryan and Bob have their own unique history with our organization. Their stories each begin with incidents that led to the crossing of our paths. And many of you may pretend to be curious as to how they began their careers with us. And I would be most happy to give you a brief overview of these events.
All right.
The first one to be embraced by the PRISM family was Bryan. Bryan Rehfeldt was the only male son of a sharecropper father and a mother who was a part-time interior decorator specializing in Purdue chicken facilities. Since his father insisted on farming in Berwyn, he found it difficult to make ends meet. When he was 12, another disaster befell the Rehfeldt household, when it was revealed that his mother had been collaborating with Colonel Sanders, and she was professionally blackballed by the amateur fowl facility decorators of the greater Midwest. So, their family found itself without even the chicken feet and leftover beaks that his mother was able to obtain from her work. So it was up to little Bryan to help out as best he could. Given his natural talents for computers, it was only natural that when other kids were selling roses in newspapers or washing the windshields of cars at stoplights, the little boy with the beard began the enterprise of leaping into front seats and adjusting digital clocks for passing motorists. This was a very lucrative field, especially the 24 hours after daylight savings time. However, like as not, he found himself laying face down on the pavement wearing a set of skid marks, or trapped in vehicles headed to Milwaukee. He needed something a little more spiritual and a little less vehicular. His personal hero was Bob Trent, Bozo band leader. His real dream was to lead the Grand March in full Bozo regalia. And what he found himself doing was an all-male production of Little Women in a nightclub called Rear Review at Clark and Diversey on the near north side.
Nice place.
No one would have ever figured Bryan for a Cubs fan. This is, of course, how he came to meet Don Steiger, but that is a different story. When the time came for Mr. Hayes to assemble his entourage, he began his search for a blind African-American xylophone percussionist proficient in Latin and Icelandic rhythms. So naturally, Bryan's name came up. He was reluctant to give up his part in the club's production of Carousel, in which he received rave reviews for his portrayal of the bearded lady. After all, the job did involve purchasing a tuxedo and having to wear the women's clothing on the inside. However, with a wife and daughter in the news, that he was soon to have Brownie, he felt that it was time to seek out a more stable and wholesome environment. It was the right and responsible thing to do. But instead he joined the band. And so ironically he found himself back where he began, intellectually face down on the pavement wearing skid marks. He went on to become a pillar in the Dan Hayes Orchestra, providing a source of laughter and kind of wit, along with support to all around him in addition to his technical abilities and leadership, qualities that have been so important to the overall success of this organization. This is, of course, just a brief glossed over, sugar-coated circumvention of the truth. And the ugly secrets will be disclosed by his close associates in the next few minutes. Which brings us to Bob Yeager. The Bob Yeager story is markedly different from that of Bryan. Bob Yeager came to us from another planet in a galaxy far, far away. He landed in the front room of 1043 South LaGrange Road, much like the Tasmanian devil enters a Bugs Bunny cartoon, spinning like a tornado, complete with dust and bits of paper and road debris and the odd spray of saliva. Now, whenever two divergent cultures integrate with one another, you have a melding of ideas, even of language, and such has been the case with us over the years. For instance, Bob's mother tongue, which we assume he's been speaking, has provided us with such words as electronical, functionable, and where he comes from, we assume there is a banquet hall called Denuphalos, similar to a facility which on Earth we call Denalphos. And on his home world, there's a common phrase, much like shalom or aloha, which represents many different salutations, all combined in the two-word phrase.
Hey now.
Hey, buddy. And they have one incredibly versatile, universal word, which can be used as an adjective or adverb. A noun or verb can be applied to any context, adding dimension and even punctuation to any descriptive phrase. And this exceptionally multifaceted means of communication is the word stuff. And this word is the key to understanding the motivation behind the Bob Yeager machine. In Bob's galaxy, there is no need for garbage collection. Nothing is ever disposed of. But when stored in dark places, it mysteriously mutates and grows, sometimes breaking loose and forming new and autonomous storage facilities, crawl spaces, and warehouses. Because stuff occasionally tries to escape, it is necessary to have multiple vehicles capable of gathering it up and hauling it back. And sometimes you see it sitting on the side of roadways or at the edge of people's lawns or in common gathering places like dumpsters, and it's just waiting there for Bob to come and pick it up. Now here are some other singular characteristics of his homeworld. Where he comes from, sleep is completely unnecessary, and you don't have to sit down very much. And there, the toilets in the airport men's rooms are 12 feet long and 7 feet wide, so you can spray fire and not disturb your neighbors. And the symbol for a full tank of fuel in their transport vehicles is E. Energy and plenty of it, which explains why he has such a hard time with this Earth system. And most incredibly, every being on that planet at birth is issued a teleprompter. So, that gives you a little background on the men we have gathered tonight to honor. And both of them have become a part of our lives, and we have a variety of perspectives into these contributions from their friends and colleagues. So to begin with, there is always one person in an organization who sets the standard for excellence for all others to strive for. There's always that one person whose spiritual leadership is the catalyst for the melding of talents and strengths in an artistic endeavor. One individual set apart from the rest in a class, all by himself. Then you got your vegetarians. This is the man that introduced Bryan to the core participants of the Dan Hughes Orchestra, so won't you please welcome the tub tickler, our skin slapper, the brush brandisher, the drumming demon, Mr. Don Steiger.
Such an introduction, I don't know if I can follow that. Thank you, Nancy. I'm sure Dan prompted most of that. First, to kind of start things off here, a friend dear to all of us, Mr. Mark Angela, gave me a few notes last evening. Amazingly, I made it to the job on time. But I did stop by Mark's house and pick up a few of these.
That's a first.
You were on time.
Okay, all right. So I was there anyhow. So I'll read what Brother Mark has to say. To Bryan, Bob, and Prism. First of all, let me say to my friends, which are all of you, that I miss you all very much. I have been concentrating on healing myself for the last year. I think about you guys a lot, and will be getting in touch with all of you around Christmas time. Sure. You gotta love them. That's all there is to it. I wish the best to you all and your families. Now, Bryan. Bryan is a guy who is hard to make mad. But I think I got real close on a road trip with the band. We roomed together after a late job. I was still smoking at the time. I fell asleep after talking to Bryan for a while and woke up the next morning feeling fine. I looked over to Bryan. He was sitting on the edge of the bed. I said, "Morning, buddy. How did you sleep?" He looked at me and said, "Oh, I slept all right. If you like sleeping with a moose." I guess Mark has a snoring problem. Actually, I've seen that myself. Apparently, I had snored so loudly that Bryan got all of 10 minutes of sleep that night. I guess I put a real dent in the music education of several young students that day. But in typical Bryan fashion, he tried to blow it off, and we drove home. I was also witness to the transformation of Bryan, the dog lover, to several weeks later, after owning his dog, Bryan, the dog butcher. It seems the doggy was barking and peeing with reckless abandon. He spoke openly and often about some kind of doggy Auschwitz. Bryan, it seems that members of the Homo Club are dropping quicker than Democrats. I guess we should elect Don Steiger President pro temp of the Homo Club until our next meeting.
I second that.
Thank you very much. All the best to you, Peg and Becky. Love, Marcus. P.S. Bryan, Liz and I have chipped in and bought you a retirement gift. It's a beautiful little schnauzer puppy. Come and pick it up anytime. Okay, on to Bob. Bob, I remember driving on a road trip with you to Southern Illinois, Peoria, I think. You were on your famous liquid diet. I asked if you'd pull into a Steak and Shake so I could get some lunch. This is Mark, this isn't me.
You would eat Steak and Shake.
No, what would I have? I wouldn't even eat the white bread. I don't think they serve water, do they? Anyhow, so I could get some lunch. I'll never forget the look on your face as the woman at the drive-up window passed the food to you as you mournfully passed it to me. To your credit, you never touched a bite. Bob Yeager did many important things for me and the crew to keep us happy and on our toes. For example, at a frat boy's job we were doing downtown, for the bus rodeo, I guess he thought we were a little sad. So Bob, while dressed in Blues Brothers garb, took an exit stage left, flying leap, and landed splat on his face. It was so loud, we thought that it was real. But Bob said that he was just doing it to keep us happy. And we were. We laughed, until we cried, and I could see Mark crying on that one too. Oh, Bob. That was too good. You proved gravity still works. Yeah, it definitely does. Also, during Spectrum shows, he would keep us from losing our attention by dropping wireless mics at least once a show. That would make a really loud kaboom through the PA, and we would pay attention. Thanks, Bob, for keeping us happy and attentive. Bob, you're a hell of a guy. I love you. I'm proud of you. Let's talk before you leave to fly. Your favorite soundman / DJ, Marky. So now on to a few words that I'd kind of like to put out myself. Hopefully I can keep track of where these lines go. Bryan and I go a long way back. Bryan, my elder upperclassman, and I met in high school. Naturally, it was in the band room, and music has been a common bond between us ever since. I think we called it music. Of course, bonding has taken on a whole new meaning since the band trips we took to the Lake Lawn Lodge where Mark Godjala introduced the concept of the Homo Club to Bryan and I. Little did Bryan and I know we were in for what we were in for when DHO took the first road trip to Indiana at some resort to play for a frat for formal dance. Oh yes, we all remember well the job we geared up to play and stay at overnight. Our first one, how about it? It was big, before we even knew the Homo Club was Homo Club. After a long trip to the resort, each of us traveling individually, we played a very conservative dance, especially considering that it was for a college fraternity. At the end of the job, we broke ground for a party that has yet to be matched. However, I'll keep to this subject at present, bonding. Yes, there was much bonding to be done at this party. You can believe it. There was much to be said at this party. For instance, the brothers and sister of the BVD swimwear was just the beginning. None of us had thought about the need to bring swimwear. I mean, who would have thought we'd be swimming? And after Wes dove in his tux, and the rest of us decided that comfort was more appropriate, therefore the only civil alternative left was our BVDs. So we bonded in the BVD pool. Yes, of course, this was easily surmised through the influence of some of Milwaukee's best, which led us to another form of bonding, that of chlorinated beer.
Bryan.
It was a big one. It was definitely a big one. I mean, which led, well, once we had discovered that the pool was indoor and outdoor, we naturally had to go check the outside area. Well, there was only one way to do that since you had to go underwater and come up on the other side. Well, none of us were that coordinated that we could keep our beers totally unchlorinated, so we got more than drunk that night. However, the idea of leaving an old friend, as I said, behind, old style, was unthinkable for a one Bryan Rayfelt especially. After all, what is the great outdoors without a little bit of God's country in hand? Yeah. Having thoroughly enjoyed and disgraced ourselves through some hallway moon bonding, and I think you know what I mean, the stage was set for some intimate bonding, the likes of which I was not properly prepared for. Yes, my roommate. Yes. Assignment included sharing a bed with Brother Bryan. It was a special moment of bonding. Now, Bryan, I want you to rest assured that unlike so many of the clergy who have had those younger than them come forward and make erogenous claims, I have always appreciated... Wait a minute. I have always appreciated the energy I woke up with the next morning that propelled me to stretch and run an hour-long obstacle course that was part of the resort. It was a special moment. Yes, and so it is. bonding with Bryan has been very, very special to me. As a matter of fact, having thought about this, it occurred to me that I don't remember ever having shared beds again on any of the DHO road trips. And again, Bryan assured you that I have nothing to come forward with, but a deep respect for you. Now continuing in the bonding vein...
How deep?
We don't have a shovel. And continuing in the bonding vein, Bryan and I were among the first to jump onto the electronic musician wagon together. And after I acquired my electronic drums, Bryan quickly invited me to his house to making some requests that we get together and work on putting our equipment together. Over the years, Bryan and I have shared many of our experiences in the field of electronics. I am only curious about the repeated requests to get together so we could hook our gear together. MIDI bonding, if you will. We'll get together again, I'm sure we will. Continuing with the bonding brings me to another and very dear to my physical being, that of dumpster diving. Yes, if there were to be an Olympic event called dumpster diving, rest assured that, Bryan, you would be one of the teammates I would call to join me. And of course, you know that Mike Powell would be my #1 choice. But there is a lot to be said for your tact and professional manner in this event, Bryan. As a matter of fact, there have been times that I was totally unaware that food had even been served until Bryan let me know how great it was after it was completely gone. So there's something to be said for you. Bryan, we have shared some of the finest platters of food that dumpsters of America have to offer. And almost always under the opinion that there is no way that food should go to waste. I am indeed proud to have had the opportunity to be on the Olympic gold medal team with you. Oh yes, and thanks again for your encouraging words that one night many years ago at Antiques, when, as on many occasions, I arrived to the job without having eaten anything. And I might have been running a little late, I don't know. The waitresses looked upon my frail bone body as I picked at the whole grain dinner rolls and proceeded to set me up with a feast for a king. It was then that you came backstage, yet another kitchen dumpster area, and were so inspired by the scene that in your usual quick wit said the echoing words, "Steiger, you could go to Ethiopia and find a meal." That was my inspiration for dumpster diving, and it was a big time for me, Bryan. I really appreciate it. I was in awe of your insights since I had just had a past life reading that confirmed that I was Ethiopian in 600 BC. I don't know how you did that. Yes, bonding with you, Bryan, has been so easy and enjoyable, so filling. As a matter of fact, I now return to the band with that third plate of food, forgetting that you aren't there to eat it, and force myself to eat it on your behalf. There are so many other areas in which we have bonded: road trip bonding, earplug bonding, bathroom stall changing, Gold Coast partying, Southside Polish Highlandering, late night / AM driving with eyes closed, hotel dock maneuvering and competing. But there has always been one area we never seem to get together in, that of early arrival. I have made numerous attempts at joining you in this one, but always seem to somehow fall short. However, I have been enlightened to your inspiration by those who are there even before you, and find it is your fondness of established space, the juxtaposition. It isn't the same without you around, Bryan. No more master of the big sounds and waving of the conducting arms. I guess this is your way of getting even with me for the way I got you into this band in the first place. After telling you how the band reads music and all, you were sold and asked me if I was going to be in it. I said, yes, I'm going to be in it, Bryan. You told Dan yes, and then I told you I wasn't going to do it, Bryan. Well, maybe this many years later, you got me. Not even telling me you were retired. Well, don't worry, Peg and Becky. I'll keep the DHO pension fund alive. And now on to the big guy, Bub. I don't get around Bub too often, but when I do, it is always entertaining. Definitely. Everything from watching him sit down behind my toy drum set to his graceful way of rearranging the bandstands, mic stands, and occasionally even the personnel with his big bare body movements. With all of those gyrations, it's no wonder I was inspired to think of a routine for Footloose. Yes, it is true, Bub. You taught me everything I know. The future of Footloose is definitely in danger without you to take over from me on drums. Right now, there is only one alternative. I mean, Dan is the only available, I'm sure, but I'm not so sure I can follow that beat. My first heart-to-heart conversation with Bob was around a subject dear to both of us, and that was food. We may appear to be on opposite ends of the food spectrum, but really, we are right there together. Food is there to enjoy, and we too. There's one area that Bob and I do see things a little differently on. Oh, okay, maybe more than one, but this one has to do with the area of physical fitness. I remember a slim Bob Yeager and I having a conversation backstage one evening, all about healthy foods, etc. And then I asked the big question, so what kind of exercise do you do? I remember the white, ghostly look on Bob's face as he informed me, I don't do exercise. I did my best to encourage the concept, but Bob wouldn't have anything to do with it. I've always thought of how much exercise he gets just doing all the moving of equipment that he does. It might be best for all of us that he doesn't get any stronger considering his stage grace. Of course, this dislike for the idea of exercise can only be rivaled by Bob's deep affection for reading all of the new and numerous equipment manuals he gets into. I will really miss your comedic presence and tempo alterations, and especially the big heart you have with the broad shoulders that have taken up more than your share of the slack that bunches up in life as musical entertainers. To both of you, the best of what life has to offer is here and now, this moment of joy, recognized for what it is, eternal.
Children, now if you'll just keep your questions down. Okay, our next speaker is a unique individual in that not only is he a guitar player,
Question mark.
but an insurance salesman. This combination alone is reason enough to repeal the laws against public stoning. When you add his personality to the quotient, then you begin to question the very fundamentals of evolution. I call upon that great teddy bear of a junior band leader, soon to be your king. The very adorable Mr. Jeff Rutter. Here's his speech.
Sure. I had prepared a very long, involved speech, but Nancy requested we keep it to intelligent comments and slashed it in a third. I was forced to do the impossible. I was supposed to be short and not say any goddamn swear words. And the former night shift orchestra, or the continuing night shift orchestra with Bob Yeager at the helm, never really lost a bad tug of war. So we were forced to replace him with 4 other people. Of course, altogether, we still won't have as many vehicles as Bob has. But we do have a lot more back lawn to mow. Well, how about Bob? I'll get back to you. Now on to Bryan.
You got glasses?
No, I need
You
less.
got a couple of glasses already?
When Bryan ran Spectrum, he'd always walk back and forth across the stage, and we couldn't quite figure out why. He'd be yelling at Tom Fox to keep it down, or on the other side there was Hank and me. So we understand, we understand why he was running back and forth, because during the quiet parts of the brass, he'd be telling Tom, keep it down, the next phrase, and the quiet parts of the rhythm, he'd be telling me and Hank to keep it down. And of course, with Bryan's sensitive hearing, Hank Horton and I had to finally get amps the size of our genital packages. My amp was much larger than Hank's. And we finally figured out after a couple of years of, with Bryan and Mark Odula, that Dan Hixon doesn't have tinnitus. However, he is a carrier. So, in lieu of Bryan, leaving the organization, we were kind of always wondering, and we can all ask during one of the brief intermissions when everyone has to take a leak, why Sharon Cavalli and her family left the school district Bryan works at right before their child got to kindergarten. We don't know why. We won't ask that. We don't know that much about Bryan. We only see him on the jobs. And Bryan, as you lead this organization, one philosophical waxing is, may the wind at your back always be your own. Good luck, Bryan. Now back to boob. Freudian slip, sorry. Why would I Freudian? Marianne, there you are. Andrew, you went you with him. Kids are more than you fit in him. Miracle. Don doesn't wear it. It'll look better. Okay, well, it's a roast, Just kidding. There was, Don made mention to it when Bob got a little bit slimmer, that he gave a bunch of his clothes to me. And then, of course, when he rejoined the Dunlop's disease group, with his belly done locked over his belt like me and Hank and Wes. And, he tried to get all his clothes back from me. He did. I fooled him. I had taken up the sleeves and the hems. And he was so desperate to get him back. We were on the way back from a Spectrum job, and I caught his ass hanging out of one of the Salvation Army bins at Kmart, and he was trying to get the rest of his fucking wardrobe back. But as Ron Brandt, one of the gentlemen that's going to be trying to take one of Bob's places, says, you don't exactly fill Bob's shoes, you give them to your puppy or you burn them. And Bob and I have been tossing the night shift orchestra leadership back and forth, depends on how comfortable it is in a particular scene. And like if we get a tip, I'm the leader. You're a great audience. Can you stick around? Don't change. Don't change. Okay.
Cadavers.
Okay, bunch of necrophiliacs, let's go. Of course, if we're too loud, he's the leader, the big guy, the guy in purple. Yeah. If I need a beer during the break, Bob all of a sudden is back to being the leader. Yeah, you can handle it, Bob, I'll do it. And of course, if a group of 15-year-old bar mitzvah girls want autographs, Bob and I sumo wrestle to see who's the leader. But last night, we have a funny story about last night. Night Shift Orchestra played what was to be a wedding reception and it turned into a one-family reunion when the groom apparently didn't come, and he kind of jilted the bride before the wedding service. And but in this band we're talking big butts. The truth was that the bride and her family had actually recently won a 29. Andrea, you're working your way out of it. Keep it up. Don't change too much. No, you are. Get a personal trainer. She's working her way out of it.
I know. You're getting yourself in trouble.
And you're lucky you're still a corporation after that tirade at the racetrack the other night. Just kidding. Okay. Well, the bride, we found out the bride recently won $29 million. You know.
I heard.
Well, you're 49. 39 million in the lottery, and the groom, they kind of decided somehow that he might have been a gold digger, so they kind of called it off. And it was funny to see that faster than even Steve O'Brien and I could pull out our business cards, Bob was able to wrench his wedding ring off his finger while dislocating his elbow, went in for arthroscopic surgery, and prepared a 4-page resume and applied for the vacant position. He moves fast on his feet. Well, before I leave you, the other day I was following Bob, and he pulls up to the drive-thru, and he goes, "Honey, give me 95 extra spicy chicken wings." Sir? Honey, wait a minute, I'm on a roll. I want 17 double chili cheese dogs. Sir. I want 4 onion ring loaves and 46 hot apple pies and a small Diet Coke with no ice. And the girl goes through the speaker, she goes, "Are you Bob Yeager?" He goes, "What gave it away? Was it the 95 extra spicy chicken wings?" She goes, "No." "Was it the 17 double chili cheese dogs? Was it the 4 onion ring loaves? Or the 46 hot apple pies?" She goes, "No, sir. This is a bank." Bob, good luck.
Thank you, Jeffrey. Now, when I think of our next roast master, I reflect that he is a man that would readily and enthusiastically defend you for brutally murdering Mother Teresa for pocket change. Yet he would appear as star witness for the prosecution and joyfully have you thrown into a Turkish prison for playing the maracas poorly on Spanish eyes.
That's true.
You have no idea how true that really is.
He's very straight.
He is a man of great and varied passions. Please welcome Mr. Dan Hessler.
I'm here to talk about Bryan. Very few people realize that Bryan and I have been lovers for all these years. But I'm going to keep this brief. I'm going to tell you the top 10 reasons why it's not the same without Bryan and family. Reason number 1. Sorry, reason number 10. Don Steiger now occasionally arrives before the keyboard player. Reason number 9. Braces are now what Dan Hixon uses to keep his pants up. Number 8. No one else has the amusing dog hatred stories that Bryan does. Number 7. What are we going to do if we need the guy to 727 across the dance floor without Bryan?
Wait.
For those of you who didn't see Bryan in the last 6 months, he was wearing these industrial ear protectors.
What?
Number 6. Number 6 is in the mood. Tonight there is no number 6. Reason number 5 why it's not the same without Bryan in the band. Marianne looks great in the vest.
What about me?
Only a vest.
Well, there's only one vest. Reason number 4. When Bryan left the Dan Hayes Orchestra, the average IQ in the band went up by 5 points. Had he joined the makeshift orchestra, the same thing would have happened there.
Thank you for leaving me out.
Wait a minute.
Reason number 3. Chris Lay is now doing an announcement when Dan isn't around. Reason number 2 is that polkas are just not the same without Bryan around. And reason number 1 why it's not the same without Bryan in the band is that no one else knows CPR quite the way that Bryan does. Ask Marianne the story if you haven't heard it.
Okay, let's say Prism Entertainment is a James Bond film. Dun, 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 no. Dun, 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 dun. I've tried to teach you that like 100,000 times. Okay, Dan would be M, and he would be in charge of coordinating all the secret agents. And Bryan would be Q, the guy who reads all the manuals and sends in the warranties on the secret weapons. Bob would be Odd Job, the enforcer and destroyer of lawn decorations. Mary Kay would be Miss Moneypenny, making sure everyone knew which country they were supposed to save. And Marianne's gonna fight me for this one, but I'd say I'm a natural for Pussy galore. Pussy galore.
Here, right here, baby.
And that just leaves one role to fill. And let me tell you all, if Spectre and the forces of evil threaten our civilization, you know that we can count on him to be out there practicing his piano. So please welcome 00 Don Neale.
As Nancy has already informed you, we have recently discovered that Bob is an alien. This was due to my own perspicuous reasoning, and luckily my background in physics has helped me decipher this. I've been thinking about all of Bob's personal idiosyncrasies and personality quirks, and I finally came upon a physical explanation for it. If you'll remember, there was one Star Trek episode where the crew members were abducted by an alien society where people moved around many, many times faster than the crew on the Enterprise did. They moved around millions of times faster so that nobody could actually see them. It's like, they would just hear these little buzzing noises, and we were like standing still relative to these people. Bob is from that planet. But like many Star Trek episodes, they were not entirely scientifically accurate. And here's where I come in, of course. They didn't take into account special relativistic effects. See, these people are actually moving at speeds close to the speed of light. So you have to take into account Einstein's theory of special relativity. Now, there are three main parts to it. There's length contraction, mass increase, and time dilation. Now, of course, time dilation was the key to my whole thing of figuring this out. Any musician who's worked for Bob knows he lives in a different time universe than the rest of us. So working with this is my most accurate basis for figuring this out. I figure what for any of us, if a song was supposed to be played at 120 beats per minute, it would be comfortable for Bob at 140 beats per minute. So I plug this into the Lorentz formula, and I come up with a factor of about 0.5 C. So Bob is moving at approximately half the speed of light, or roughly 100,000 miles per second. So you can understand why he can be somewhat impatient with the rest of us. It also explains another set of other personal idiosyncrasies. We think he's got all these vehicles. He runs them to death in what's a blink of an eye to us. So he's constantly having to recycle them. We think he owns all these tons of stuff. We never actually even see half the stuff he uses. He goes through it so quick, it's just gone before we would even notice it. I would think a lot of times the band would launch into another tune and I wouldn't know what it was. And I realized he had actually told me, it just happened so fast I didn't hear it. So using this factor, I realized that Bob, in his space-time coordinates, is probably about 7 feet 6 tall. He only weighs about 200 pounds. He looks something like Sean Bradley or Manute Bol. And when he lost weight, it really was just him slowing down to our space-time coordinate system. Nothing had really changed at all about it. But if you think you have problems up north dealing with folks, in your time, as fast as you're going, when you go down south, everything is much, much, much slower. Though for those of you who don't know, I'm originally from Chattanooga, Tennessee, and when I call one of my sisters back home, it's, "Hello, Donald. How you doing?" So when you talk to people and it looks as if they didn't even hear what you said, you know it's time to slow down. Now in the Star Trek episode, McCoy came up with some sort of special concoction to help slow the people down to get back into the regular space-time coordinates. I have a little thing here that we down south use. So whenever you find you're having problems communicating with Southerners, you just need to take a couple of swigs of this, and you'll be right back into a Southern space-time coordinate system.
Great job. Okay. Our next contributor is a man of extraordinary talents. Not only was he for many years a featured performer with the Dan Hayes Orchestra, but he managed at the same time to battle his way up the corporate ladder, become an elder in his church, be subjected to extensive and exhaustive international travel, maintain a resplendent variety of power ties, and amid all of this, still manage to almost constantly inseminate his wife. And who knows how many others. Can only guess.
Wonderful receptacles. There you go.
Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you a man who could still get laid by anybody. Well, perhaps somebody in this room. Mr. Wes Young.
as you can tell, I don't have a lot of notes here. This is somewhere around 12, 13 years now since Dan and I have gotten together. I have a lot of stories. Basically, when I walk up to a microphone in front of this kind of group, I usually hear, "Shut up, get off the stage!" And that's usually directed by my wife. Okay. Now, when was that? She said the phrase, this goes way back, but we were celebrating one of Dan's finest days, and maybe I had too many of those scotches. I got up to direct the crowd. I was like controlling things at the time.
Party master.
Yes, party master. What, can anybody read what it says in front of me?
Westchester, not so young.
No, above that. I couldn't pronounce what it's called.
Roast rapscallion.
Rostosaurus.
Roast rapscallion.
Roast rapscallion is what I was when I walked up and said that Dan could get laid by anybody in the room. And his mom started yelling at me all the time. Well, that was fun. Anyway, we're here to pay homage, if you will, to Bob and to Bryan. And as I said, I go way back with Bryan. To begin with, when I first came back from a previous gig I was on and got hired by the Dan Hayes Orchestra, I met Bryan on the first rehearsal. I was impressed to know afterwards that Bryan was glad to be there because, as it was put earlier, he was glad to know we read music. Now, I didn't know what Bryan was into before that. You know what? But this was a good start. Okay, we could read music, so we were on our way. This was sent out to the first job we ever had. I've got to tell you about the first job we ever had. Many of you don't go back that far, but we knew 12 songs? 12 songs, by the way. We went to Nico's out on the west side, and it was a swinging party. It was, and as a matter of fact, we probably all wouldn't be here today. We'd be off on our own yachts somewhere had we taken the advice of one individual there. Who after about, well, the fourth time we had to play Johnny Be Good, came up to us with a suggestion. It said, if you guys could take that song you played and go to vinyl, you'd be millionaires. We played Daddy's Little Girl. Yeah. And this guy was so enthralled with the way we played it, he asked us to play it again. It's the time we done an encore presentation of Daddy's Little Girl. That was it. Led by Bryan. It was the start of a huge career for all of us.
Who was in it? Who are all you career? Who was it in the first group?
The first group.
The 12 songs. You, Dan.
No, don't talk about the 12 songs.
After the
It was Dan and Bryan.
We're still doing it.
Yeah, it's still the same people, it's still the same songs. And in the mood.
In the mood, after the love, number 6.
Number 6. I can't remember the words.
No, we're still working on that. But then it became road trips. And road trips we became famous for. You've been around for some of these. Whenever we talk about stories that are related to the Dan Hayes Orchestra or Spectrum and Wes Young, it usually involves urine. Yeah, that's what I say. But it just always seems to work that way. And Bryan always comes out as the nice guy in all of this, and he's always buying all of it. Every time. We take this trip up north, real early in the band's career. And in those days, we had brought a little libation along with us. So coming home, we stop on 294 on the way back home. And I climb out of the van, Bryan climbs out of the van. Well, we all, at that time, economized, we all rode in the same van together, sitting on top of the equipment, singing like 96 bottles of beer on the wall. And my buddy here, Don, gets out of the van. So we're all on the side of the road with cars buzzing by, and everybody's taking a leak. I had to take the longest leak.
We know that.
It has nothing to do with insemination. When I get done and turn around, they're in a van, and the van's moving down the highway. Brian's the good guy in all of this. He's in there prodding him on. Dan, go ahead and go. I turn around. They're gone down the road. Keep going. I'm running down the road trying to catch these guys. Trying to, I've lost my load. Finally catch on to them. Now here it is. Brian's always the good guy in all this. Still, all to this day, he's the good. Here's the other bad guy right here. Hey, you look like hell. What happened?
What was her name?
Tom Fox, ladies and gentlemen.
Ladies, they don't.
That was like an hour and a half set if I ever saw it.
Did you get overtime?
No. Did you get laid?
Back to Bryan. Going on with it, I think Don mentioned earlier that we were on this road trip to Indiana. It was a good night. I did end up in the hot tub with my tuxedo. I had my tuxedo on. I had my shoes on.
Shoes on.
Everything. And I looked at Bryan. Bryan says, "There's no way I'm going in there with you. Forget it." So he didn't go. Later on, it wasn't me who chased the honeymoon couple away. But I was sitting in that sauna. And it was my buddy Bryan who walked in with the maroon-colored bikini underwear on. For those of you who know Bryan, by the way, he is just this close to clinically blind. And at the time, you weren't wearing your contacts, you had your glasses on. And when he has his glasses off, he can't see a thing. He didn't know the honeymoon couple was in there when he walked in. Yeah. Well, they were gone. It had nothing to do with me with my tuxedo. It was really Bryan. See, all these years I've been taking the bad rap of being, the bad guy. The guy with all the urine stories. And Brian's been buying most of them. But the other thing about Bryan is he's a true Democrat, so he's used to being quite a loser here. I think Brian's the only guy I know who voted for John Anderson. Remember about 8 years ago? You did vote for him, didn't you?
I did.
Now, this is our road trips. Always ended up, for some reason, Bryan and I were in the car together, and we talked politics for some reason. Now, me being a good DuPage County Republican, I like to hear all the other side, because I know they can't win. So, this goes back to the early days. Bryan kind of bared his soul to me many times. Bryan is the true advocate of, if you save something, it'll come back again. He's probably wearing bell-bottoms right now, and he's right in style again. Bryan is the prototypical hippie from the hippie era, whether you know it or not. We affectionately call him the Professor, and rightfully so. His Democratic roots has nothing to do with it. He looks like Abraham Lincoln. So for all these trips together, talking politics and all, he got talking into telling me about his college days. Now, his college days weren't so that much different than my days, but if anybody knows Bryan as I do, he is very much the hippie. You laugh because you're talking about it. Bryan's got some deep, dark secrets we won't bring up here.
No, go ahead.
Okay. Say, no, Peggy doesn't know about it.
No.
Well, let me I'll just leave it at this.
Tell him to shut up already, Wes.
Inseminator.
Nobody's got to shut up, get off the stage yet, so we're doing all right. Bryan has spent time in jail for protest. I know this is really sad. Let's give him a hand.
My hero.
But he's the only guy in the band that I know from 13 years ago still has the same tuxedo. He's hoping that comes around too again sometime.
It's clean though, you just got it back from the cleaner.
Yeah, but that vest has got to go. Well, it was 5 years ago. I've been gone about that long. Bryan, we love you very much. I know this is supposed to be a roast, but I can't tell enough about the respect that I have for you and for what a great person and great friendship we've had over the 12 years. That's enough. Good show. Then there's Bob.
Bob, you're always there.
Bob, with your looks, with that tie, you get down south, evangelism. I only have one theory on this. Bob has been prepping for this for years.
Let's take it on the road.
Very much good.
It would. We believe, Bob, we believe.
Bob's going to take it on the road, and I'll tell you what, it doesn't have to be political, it doesn't have to be theological, musical. Go preach it all. Maybe chickens. But he knows chickens very well. That's kind of an inside unless you've ever sat down with Bob eating a chicken. Maybe that's our next party. We sit down with Bob and have a chicken. Bob, it's been a great pleasure knowing you. I hope you don't stay away from us too long. Or at least you give us a place to stay when we come down here.
Tune into your cable TV channel.
Well, there's one thing Bob's always missed, and I think since 10 years or so I've known Bob, and I know Dan's been harping on this, the one thing Bob hasn't done is tried golf. Now you're going down to the land of resorts and golf, and if at your warp speed, it'd be very tough for you to slow down and play 4 hours of golf. But if there's anything that we could recommend to you, is now it's time to start, play golf, lay back.
Go to
Disney
Disney World.
World's you don't need to do that. But funny story with Bob. This goes to the time, this is very recently, this summer, and of course we all know Bob's penchant for equipment. I just wanted to, my little kids were doing this little boat parade, and I wanted some equipment for this. So we had a generator, and we're going to have a little sound system. Dan took care of the music. And I show up to get some equipment, and Bob's there. So what I want to do is go out on this boat, and we're going to have the generator going, and we're going to play a little music. And then Bob throws into, how many people have seen this? Oh, great, okay, here we go. Well, I ended up loading up my car. The back end was down to the ground. I had JBL speakers, and I had backfills and everything else I needed to go out there. Bob says, "Here, come on. This is what you're going to need." I said, "Bob, I don't need this much." "Oh, yes, you do. You need this much. You have to have a big production." So.
And we won a trophy, Bob. So
and we won the trophy. That's true.
The most equipment.
No, we had about 10 miles of shoreline, and we got told afterwards that they thought we won because we were the only ones that could hear it. But if there's one thing about Bob, he's always been big for production. And Bob, may you continue to be big for production, and we're going to miss you. We're going to miss you big time. Bryan, did you hear what I said? I said we love you very much and we miss you too.
Thank you, Wes.
Thank you, Wes. Next, I would like to introduce to you a woman who has brought joy and effervescent personality not only to her friends and colleagues, but true gladness and delight to a group of people who normally are an underclass, underpaid, and harassed group of people. And I'm speaking, of course, of the airport security personnel. And each Christmas, when her video is played at airport staff holiday parties across the nation, she perpetuates that spirit. And now with something only a little less sensational, I introduce to you my very close personal friend, Miss Marianne Murphy.
I was wishing that the retailers of America I brought joy to. I have notes here, unlike Wes, but I wrote them, so I can't read them. And bearing in mind that funny is not really my strong suit, Nancy is the funny one among the band bitches. I thought maybe that I just wear black and rely heavily on cleavage.
Yeah.
Everybody knows that everybody looks good in black. And Ryan Rayfeld is certainly no exception. He's graced the stage in basic Dan Hayes poly black, with assorted bow ties, keyboard suspenders, and his signature vests for nearly 14 years. But Bryan looks good in everything. Bryan looks good in braces. Bryan looks good in braces. Bryan looks super in maroon bikini bikini. If you just ask the Sweethearts of Sigma Chi, they changed their theme song from "The Girl of My Dreams, Sweetest Girl," etc. to Down in Indiana, in an indoor-outdoor pool, swam 6 musicians at a famous indie school. Swim, said the leader, even though it's February, so Bryan did his famous beer bottle carry.
That's where it is.
Good, I like it.
What's the next line, Bob? This guy can pull off totes zipless rubbers over his black patent leather shoes like with complete panache. He looks good with flat hair now. He looks good with fluffy hair. Recently, he started a new fashion trend among musicians with his supersonic turbocharged earmuffs, which are strong enough to blot out the sound of a 747 at arm's length.
But not hang.
Powerful enough to silence an 8-alarm fire in the building next door. Almost strong enough to blank out Hank's sound. But Bryan's done more than look good up there. He has sounded darn good too. I don't know if any of you remember, he blew a mean sax solo on Pennsylvania 657. And he's almost always playing the same song in the same key as the rest of the band. Loved about him. Also, more importantly, he felt good. Bryan felt good to have around.
How good did he feel?
He felt that boy feels good. Let me kick in my gut here before you take that. No. He's always felt good to Dan because he's utterly loyal, utterly dependable, always well over an hour early for every gig, very much like Don and myself. Former life.
Who are you?
He feels good to Nancy because he's so sharp and clever, and Nancy so appreciates sharp, clever minds. He feels good to the guys because when you're with a jobbing band doing your 150th job of the year, you better be, as Dan Hessler puts it, a good hang. You depend heavily on your pals for yucks on the brakes to get you through. And he feels good to me because, you know, I think it's a well-known fact that I love men, and Bryan happens to be one. And he feels good to all of us because it's a roast, and so Nancy, go to the bathroom for a minute. Smart, loyal, dependable, amusing, talented, genuine, absolutely adorable, which maybe only the women appreciate. He's one of the originals in more ways than one, and we love you very much, Bryan. So it's so nice to have you with us. To Bob. I'm going to pack up my steel-toed boots now because I no longer need them. I'm saying the stage is safe for womankind again. Bob looks good in everything. Of course, Bob looks good in black too, but I intend to come down to Florida and finally see you in that fully sequined tuxedo.
Yeah, there you go.
Most of the funny things I left to the funny people to say about Bob, but I must say one thing to you, young man. It's going to break my heart not to hear you sing every night. You are a god. In closing, thank you so much for all the efforts you put forth on behalf of the organization and how proud you've always made us feel to be a part of it. We love you, and you guys, y'all come back now here.
Thank you. All right, we have a couple of more things here. These are directed at Bryan, and these are commemorative items for certain aspects of your professional career.
The brass room.
First of all, there's a place that is close to the hearts of all Southsiders, and Bryan joins that group. And it is a place naturally that's open almost. And it's something, this is, Bryan, something that you have probably picked up as your own souvenir, but I want to make sure that you have a commemorative issue, and that's Billy Boy's bark bag, provided by the Southside restaurant Billy Boy's, where the grease is always complimentary. So, Bryan, that's for you to take home tonight. Now, there have been various references to the road trip. Now, you would all think, those of you that were not with the Dan Hayes Orchestra, you would all think that there was only one road trip, and there were many. However, there was only one where there were no wives present, so everyone went crazy, I guess, and you know, the weather was unusually warm. Well, anyway, some unusual things happened, and I felt it was necessary that I create something for Bryan in case it should ever happen again. Should all of the environmental, you know, the full moon and the, you know, whatever was in Sagittarius and whatever should all fall, you know, into line again, that this should happen. And this is a beer bottle in its own little life jacket here with a buoy And it floats for you, Bryan, so you don't get quite so much of that chlorine in there for the sleuthing that took place following the drinking of the beer. So that's another special something for you to take home tonight. And
Did we mention how sick Bryan was?
well, the barfing and the diarrhea, no, that wasn't mentioned. I don't think that should be on tape either.
I want to mention that because Bryan and I are riding together that morning, the next morning, and I said, Bryan, hey, listen, do you want to go to Burger King and we'll get a croissant? No. I said, hey, how about we go to McDonald's and get an Egg McMuffin or, no. He says, I need some Pepto-Bismol. No. We drove. Everybody else going to restaurants. We go straight to the Walgreens, and he's sitting in my front seat, just gargling this stuff all the way down from Indianapolis clear up to. That's true.
He was absolutely great.
Huh? He was
Special combination of beer and upper GI flushing. Okay, now no one, which I am quite surprised, no one mentioned the incident of the woman on the dance floor. And
I applied it.
yes, you implied it, but there were no details. And actually, that woman has been in communication with us. And on this particular incident, there was particularly vigorous polka. And a woman had an aneurysm, or she strained herself in some particular physical way, and she found herself bones up in the bandstands. And Bryan, as a responsible adult and I might say a school, well, an amateur paramedic, but in charge of a school himself, he leapt forward and checked the vital signs of this woman to make sure that she was not dead. And so she has, in fact, communicated with us, as I said, and expressed her appreciation. And in fact, she has sent along for our kind of Bryan museum commemorative parts of her clothing.
We thought she was dead.
And here we have, this was from her. I'm not sure exactly how it took place, but she was very appreciative of the CPR-like administrations that she received. It says here, thanks to my very special hero, I never felt like this before, and good thing you were there to lend your support. And she did add a postscript to this message. I ended up with bruises in the funniest places. And so, Bryan, that is another thing for you to add to your museum.
Elmhurst Country Club, I might add.
And finally, and this is not humorous in any way, this is actually, this is factual. We are very concerned about your medical history and your medical state from now on, Bryan. And so I have purchased, and it was, my own personal expense, but we will mention that, something that I hope you will use in the future, and it is what they call in the medical field a prostate protector. And I would like you to wear it. Now, I am not educated in the medical field, and I'm not sure exactly how to apply this. If you feel the need to put your dinky in there, I think perhaps that might be the best way to do it. But you would put your, prostate in there, and as Marianne and I are not around to watch you medically, this will protect you in the future. I think, at least that is the application that I was told it should be. So this is your commemorative prostate protector, and so we have these things for you, Bryan, to take home with you tonight to commemorate your evening.
Video screen.
Yeah. We have something very special for you from Mr. Tom
Having
Fox.
this get-together today for Bryan Rayfeld and Bob Yeager. And I'm presenting mine on videotape because I'm doing a concert out in Joliet, and I will be there later on, but I wanted to make sure that I got my 2 cents in. So hi to everybody, first of all. Now let's talk about Bryan Rayfeld for a few minutes. I met Bryan Rayfeld in the fall of 1984 when I joined along with Dan and Nancy and the Prism Entertainment staff, and it was probably 6 months before I ever said hello to Bryan, because whenever I would get to the gig, he'd be sitting there with headphones on practicing his piano. And then we'd go on break, he'd sit there with headphones and practice his piano. So I really never got a chance to talk to the guy. And it was about 6 months before I introduced myself and found out what his name was. Bryan was always a real asset to the band. He did a lot of great things with us. Never had very good jokes, always had jokes about principals, teachers, and second graders. But we taught him some very good jokes, and probably the best thing that will ever come from Bryan leaving the band is that Peggy won't have to listen to my jokes at 3 o'clock in the morning when he gets home, because I know she doesn't appreciate that too much. What I want you to do right now is just take a little walk with me, and I want to show you a couple of things. Welcome to the Bryan Rayfeld Memorial Wing of the Fox household. Now, the reason I brought you into this room, we call this room the music room here at the Fox house, and the reason I brought you into this room because everything Bryan ever wanted to get rid of in this house, he sold to me. He sold me this computer, which, if you're familiar with computers, it's a Commodore 64. Now, about a month after I bought this computer, I ran out of paper for it, and nobody seems to know what paper you can get for a Commodore 64 because it's just too damn old. I tried to give the computer away to a couple of schools, thinking maybe I could get a tax break or something, and nobody knows how to run a Commodore 64 because they thought that I was some kind of a Stone Age person having a Commodore 64. We've had a lot of fun with it, but if you know anybody who wants it, please let me know. I put a note up at the Jewel about the Commodore 64, and a gentleman came by, and he says, "Oh, no, don't tell me that." He says, "You've got a Commodore 64. He said, "Nobody knows how to run that. You'll never sell that to anybody." So I figure I'm stuck with it. I'm going to hang on to it, and maybe someday I'll be able to sell it back to Bryan. Oh, by the way, Tom Tallman said that maybe they could start a little museum over at the College of DuPage, and this could be one of their first computers that they could put in their little museum and then upgrade from there on out. So, you know, maybe that can happen over at College of DuPage. Now, the next thing that I bought from Bryan Rayfeld was this Fender Rhodes piano. Now, it's a beautiful piano, and I thought Marge maybe would want to learn how to play the piano. So we bought some books, and Marge started learning how to play the piano, and about 2 months later, she still couldn't play Come to Jesus in whole notes. So I've got this beautiful piano, and I've got this beautiful computer here sitting in the Bryan Rayfeld wing of the Fox household. Now, if you could take a walk with me one more time, I'd like to finish my presentation about Bryan. Now, as a parting shot, Bryan, you've been trying to organize a poker game. I know you've been trying to have a poker game for the last 9 years that I've known you. Several times we've set it up. Dan booked a job. We never really got to play. But I'm not quite sure. After the last party we had at your house, when you and Wes Young and Dan Hixon walked Marge and I to the car, then you proceeded to pee on 3 of the tires of Marge's car. So, you know, I'm not sure that we really want to come for a poker game, but please put one together and we'll have fun some night. As a parting shot, Bryan, I want you to know that I'm going to keep up your tradition. Now, I'm being real serious. Every New Year's Eve, after 4 or 5 old styles before the last set, I'm going to walk up to somebody and I'm going to tell them next year I'm going to practice my saxophone so that I can play in the section sometime. And I promise I'll get it down. Bryan, it's been a pleasure the last 9 years, and I'm sure we'll see more of each other in the future, and God bless you and your family. Thank you. Did very, very often look for another drummer. We got, from Orlando, Florida, we got a videotape of a band that was working down that way, show band, and the drummer came out dressed as a girl on the tape and sang a tune. And of course, when he was singing this tune, he was looking down at the monitor constantly because the words were obviously on the monitor, so we knew right then that he couldn't memorize words. Then Dave decided to hire this guy. This guy moved up here to the Chicagoland area in the fall of 1982. We met Bob at that time. He would come up on stage and sing After the Lovin' because it was the only tune that he knew by heart, knew all the words. And I think he still does know all the words. I don't think he's forgotten any by this time. He was with the band for about, a month, learning the routine, learning all the dance steps and the jokes and everything. And then the first night that he was on the band full time, with that band we had like a 4-hour setup, and it would take us at least 2.5 hours to get out of the place late at night. Well, I learned from Dick Richards how to take my time and not work too hard on loading the truck. And my first confrontation with Bob Yeager, he came up, tapped me on the shoulder and says, "Tom, you're not working hard enough. We're going to have to get out of here real quick." And I looked at him and I said, "Big guy," I says, "there's one thing that you need to know. I'm not going to work too hard, and you're not going to hurry me up." After that, we became great friends. It was then that I knew that we would become good friends when I rode with him in his van out to Des Moines, Iowa for a job. And he packed a sack of sandwiches. And I mean, he had a brown paper sack, and it was a grocery bag. And it was full of sandwiches and potato chips and things like that. Well, it's a 6-hour drive out to Des Moines, Iowa. And we got out, probably within 30 or 40 miles of Des Moines, Iowa. And I says, "Hey, Bob, let me try one of your sandwiches." "Oh, Tom, I'm sorry, they're all gone." So then, right then, I knew he was my kind of guy. He polished off all those sandwiches before we got to Des Moines, Iowa. Then one time I had the honor to room with Bob Yeager. Obviously, Dave Perry was probably only getting $4,000 or maybe $4,500 for the job, and didn't have, we couldn't afford rooms for everybody, so I had to double up with Bob at one point. And I came back to the room after going to some tavern somewhere, and laid down, get ready to go to sleep, and there's Bob sitting on the side of the bed, and he's putting cords together. He's soldering cords. I woke up about 10:30, 11 o'clock in the morning, if I recall, because I'm going to go play golf with Dick Richards, and Bob's still sitting there on the side of the bed soldering cords. So I knew that the guy did know how to work. We went out to Okoboji, Iowa, and I don't know if Bob would want me to tell you this story, but I've got to tell you because it's quite funny. And several years previous to Bob joining the band, we stayed at Oak Hill Cottages in Okoboji, Iowa, and we got to know the owner of the Oak Hill Cottages very well. And we all had our own little cottage on the lake, and it was real nice. And so Bob stayed in one of the cottages there. The girls came out to visit one time. Marge and Dick Richards' wife and Glenda had come up to the Chicagoland area by that time. Well, they came out to visit, and the next morning there's a knock on my door. And there's Bob, and I just got out of bed, and I'm half awake. He says, "Tom," he says, "I think I'm in trouble." I said, "What's wrong, Bob?" He says, "Well, my bed went right through the floor of the cottage." I I says, well, wait a minute, your bed can't go through the floor of the cottage. So I went over to his cottage and walked inside, and there's half of the bed laying down in the floor of the cottage. Well, this was an old floor, and I guess he was just glad to see Glenda. And so we went and told the owner, and the owner laughed for about a half hour, and when he got done laughing, I guess he went over and he fixed the floor of the cottage. So that was one funny that happened to Bob. So I hope you all get a kick out of that story. Then I joined up with Prism Enterprises after I left Dave Major and the Miners, and Bob still hung around for a while. And then he decided to give Prism Enterprises a call and see if he could get a job with them and stay here in the Chicagoland area. Well, he came to me one day real excited because he thought he was going to get a purple coat. And when you get a purple coat in the Hixon organization, you know you've made it right to the top. And Bob wore that purple coat proudly and has done just a tremendous job for Prism Enterprises. Now what I want you to do is take a walk with me, because Bob only lives about a half a block from me here in Woodridge, and I want to show you a couple of things. Lovely Woodridge Estates, and we're standing in front of the Yeager home, and I'd like to show you their home. You know, a wise man once said that the home is where the heart is. And I'd like to prove that to you at this moment. If you'll just follow me right over this way. This is the Yeager residence. And if you'll see, the kitchen is there on the left. There's JW's room. There's Tyler's room. The master bedroom and suite, the bathroom. It really is a beautiful home here in Woodridge. And I just wanted to make sure that I showed it to you. Now, the next thing I want to do is we're going to get on an airplane and we're going to take a little ride, so please come on with me. Here we are in beautiful sunny Orlando, Florida. We just got off the airplane. We've come to visit Bob and Glenda's new home. If you'll just follow me just for a second. Here we are in front of Bob and Glenda's new home in sunny Orlando, Florida. If you'll see the beautiful entryway on the left, they have a 3-car garage. They have a beautiful big master bedroom with a whirlpool bath and everything. There's Tyler's room, there's JW's room, there's the master bedroom, and it really is a gorgeous house. I'll tell you, there's one thing about being in Orlando is you'll always have friends when you have a humongous house like this. And I'll tell you, Bob, you're one of the best. You're one of our friends. Okay. Now, another good story about Bob Yeager is one time I went to lunch with Bryan Palmer. And on our way back from lunch, we were working the Holiday Inn there on Algonquin Road in Rolling Meadows. And on our way back from lunch, we came around behind the hotel, and we saw this big butt sticking out of a white elephant. And I looked at Bryan, Bryan looked at me, and we both thought, no, it can't be. We stopped, and up pops Bob Yeager's head. He's in the white elephant, and he's looking for some real good junk that he can take home with him. So now I'd kind of like to demonstrate a little bit about how Bob has lived a lot of his life, especially around me and his close friends. Now, if you'll follow me over this way, this is a perfect example of where Bob would get most of his junk. Now, I'm going to show you a little bit how he does it, and I want you to know that he's probably going to train his children to do the same thing. Now, you have to be able to lean over this thing to get the junk that's way down in the bottom. You find out where all the good junk is, see? Oh, hey, Tyler, you're small enough. Can you get that fucking hacksaw down there? You could squeeze between that particle board and that drywall right there. Yeah, there it is right there. Okay, hey, JW, can you get that ironing board there? Well, just pull on that ironing board, get it up to where I can grab it, and we'll pull it out of there and take it home. Now, kids, I don't want you trying this at home. You have to be a professional, in order to go through these things. And once you've gone through it and got all the good junk that you can out, you got to move right on to the next one. You can't waste much time because these are everywhere. If you could turn the camera around, I think there's a real good one right over there. See that one over there? See the one with the big boxes? I'll bet underneath those boxes there's some real good junk. So I want to make sure that you know how to do this and you know the right steps, and Bob has taught me, believe me, everything that I know. And I want to tell you that there's a lot of good finds in these white elephants around town. Thanks. Well, Bob, we've come to the end of our presentation, and we hope you enjoyed it a little bit. And we just want you to know that you guys have been good friends of ours for a long time. We're going to miss you.
Glenda said don't get mushy.
Quite a
I'm
bit.
sorry, Glenda.
We're going to miss you, so please keep a room open for us down in Orlando, because I'm sure we'll come down and visit Disney World. And I guess I'm going to miss you the most, because whatever tool I need to work around the house, you've got it in your garage. So from Marge, myself, and Drew, we sure will miss you a lot.
You want to say anything? You want to say bye to JW?
And you.
Bye, Glenda. Bye, JW. Bye, Tyler. We'll see you soon. Save us a room. What about you?
I don't know.
And to Brian Rayfeld, we'll miss you also.
Well, we've been together for 12, 13 years, 10 years. And you know what's funny is when you think about it, all the people here tonight, you know, you look at, I'm sorry, Brian, in this case, I'm going to put you in the normal department, Neale and Bob. I've never met anybody like Bob Yeager in my whole life. What an unusual character, what a great character. And I'm sure all of us will remember the personality of Bob and his wife for all these years. Let's hear it for Bob Yeager. The sweetest guy on the planet over there, Bryan Rayfeld. And his beautiful family. Let's hear it for him. Enjoy the rest of the night, everybody. The bar's open for a while.
See? Oh, hey Tyler, you're small enough. Can you get that broken hacksaw down there? You could squeeze between that particle board and that drywall right there. Yeah, there it is right there. Okay, hey JW, can you get that ironing board there? Well, just pull on that ironing board, get it up to where I can grab it, and we'll pull it out of there and take it home. Now, kids, I don't want you trying this at home. You have to be a professional in order to go through these things. And once you've gone through it and got all the good junk that you can out, you got to move right on to the next one. You can't waste much time, because these are everywhere. If you could turn the camera around, I think there's a real good one right over there. See that one over there? See the one with the big boxes? I'll bet underneath those boxes there's some real good junk. So I want to make sure that you know how to do this, and you know the right steps. And Bob has taught me, believe me, everything that I know. And I want to tell you that there's a lot of good finds in these white elephants around town. Thanks. Well, Bob, we've come to the end of our presentation, and we hope you enjoyed it a little bit. And we just want you to know that you guys have been good friends of ours for a long time. We're going to miss you.
Glenda said don't get mushy.
Quite a
I'm
bit.
sorry, Glenda.
We're going to miss you, so please keep a room open for us down in Orlando, because I'm sure we'll come down and visit Disney World. And I guess I'm going to miss you the most, because whatever tool I need to work around the house, you've got it in your garage. So from Marge, myself, and Drew, we sure will miss you a lot.
You want to say anything? You want to say bye to JW?
And you.
Bye, Glenda. Bye, JW. Bye, Tyler. We'll see you soon. Save us a room. What about you?
I don't know.
And
You don't know?
Brian Rayfeld will miss you also.
Yeah.
Take care.
I don't know what I say.